Hi everyone, I'm Sam Farthing. Welcome to my studio. It's a messy place, but hopefully that's because lots is happening, especially on our renovation here at St. Paul's. So we thought we would just have a little video here where we can walk you through some of the inspiration on how we got to our design. I can talk you through a little bit of what we're planning on doing as you're seeing it unfold on site at our parish. I have about 10 or so years of experience as an architect, background in engineering as well. I've always had a passion for church architecture. The peak of architecture, the highest form of architecture has always been church architecture, I've thought. So it's always been a passion of mine, and I'm just beyond excited to be working on our church and helping to beautify our space and make it even more fitting for worship of God. So let's jump in. So I'm going to show you a little bit here on our drawings and things like that. So it'll be a little bit interactive here, hopefully, and that'll help you get a vision into what we're doing. So here we have the existing floor plan before we started tearing the church apart at the back. This was familiar to you before. Really what we wanted to do is look at bumping out the confessionals a little bit, renovating our confessionals to align with a number of goals. First of all, there was some things we needed to address with Covenant of Care, which deals with how we protect vulnerable minors and others in our parish. And also we had to look at a few things that we wanted to do in relation to our renovation itself, in kind of beautifying our space and constantly kind of working to make sure that the space that we worship in gives glory to God and is the best that we can do as faithful as Christians, and to show the world, especially our downtown core of Saskatoon and our whole city, what matters to us and what's valuable. For us, that meant is, first of all, looking at those confessionals, at dividing them up into a more traditional style where we have separate rooms, one for the priest and one for the penitent. Both P's, which gets things a little bit confusing sometimes in our drawings. But so we wanted to look at that. So dividing what previously was confessionals in the back of the church has seen different uses throughout time in the parish, but kind of bring those back. What has previously been choir access in this location here, we have had restored to the previous access to the choir through the vestibule, and so now we'll be closing that off and putting in our confessionals there on both sides. Also, as part of this, as we've been looking through this, we were looking at the holy doors. We're still working on the design for that, so I'm not going to talk about that too much right now. But again, we'll be seeing that design unfold over the next couple of weeks and months into the year of Jubilee. So why don't we start looking at, first I'll show you, as you're familiar, the existing back of the church. And I just wanted to point out a few things that we're trying to juggle here as far as technical matters go. We got lots of sprinkler pipes up above the church here. We got a main coming down. We got sprinkler pipes all the way across. I guess for me, this is just a window into the kinds of things we have to deal with when we're designing a space. There's all kinds of exigencies and things going on in an existing building that you're working with as a designer and trying to make sure that no one sees when it's done. So hopefully you're the only one ever looking at and seeing these things, and by the time things are finished and pretty at the end, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. So we're trying to wrestle with those. We've got some grills here on either side of the confessional, and then things like the archways on either side. Those we had to kind of consider what's there. What are the style and design kind of notes of the existing parish? Obviously, I think as we mentioned before, maybe it's not that obvious. The building is what you would call a Romanesque, a neo-Romanesque design, which means there's a lot of arches, a lot of round tops to arches versus the pointed Gothic arch. There's lots of brickwork on the outside, and on the inside, over the years, I think we've kind of morphed through different styles from a lot of Gothic detailing. There's arches, as I've said, lots of Romanesque detailing, and then over the years we've kind of gone through a phase, I think, of paring back a little bit of that detailing, and so I guess trying to figure out what the most appropriate style to move forward in, we felt a Romanesque style, considering there was already some detailing inside of that style. And also the exterior of the church very much has kind of the brick, the two-tone stonework and arches with round tops. Things like that really kind of are quintessentially Romanesque details. So we felt that was the best way to move forward, and that's something we've kind of been working with from day one. So that's kind of what's there from an existing standpoint. I think at a high level, visually, I guess kind of as far as the blocking goes, not a lot changed. The doors are roughly still in the same spot. And from the perspective of the front of the church looking back, you'll still see two doors on either side. and kind of confessionals in the same place that we have this roughly blocked out. So by and large, it's not a seismic shift in the way the back of our church is working. Inspirations that we were looking at and trying to figure out what to help guide us. Architectural design work never comes out of its own. It's always born out of what's come before us. Whether that tradition is a modern or a more traditional kind of style. We always have things that have gone before us that inform us, and we typically would call those precedents. So what we looked at for, I guess, a little bit of an idea of where we were coming from and so where we're going. You see here a couple of images of some more traditional styles of confessionals. What was really common in the past was a central room or closet for the priest to sit in, and then you would have a space on either side for a penitent or for somebody making a confession to come and either kneel or usually kneeling or standing sometimes and make their confession on either side. Part of this was just a functional consideration so that the priest would be in the middle. He could turn from side to side, hear confessions, and you could kind of have lines on both sides to keep things moving somewhat efficiently. Sometimes you see that open like we see in the center picture here. Other times there are rooms with doors. Obviously that's a little more private, and we thought maybe a little more preferable in this situation for St. Paul's. The one on the right here is a little more of a stone example. We considered whether we would do it out of stone or wood. We're planning on a lot of stone at the front of the church, but kind of thought, well, wood would be a little more affordable and also allow us to just move through the construction a little faster. So we kind of settled on more of a wood design. And then, from looking at confessionals themselves, one other really important consideration for us was to have the work done in the back of the church in conversation with the work happening at the front. A lot of our design inspiration from the front, I've kind of talked about style a little bit. It's of a Romanesque or a neo-Romanesque style. As we were looking through precedents for the ciborium in the church, for the ciborium, we had an example of a church that was constructed in Marseille in France. There's a number of reasons why we landed on this church as a kind of a pretty strong precedent to help guide our design. This church in Marseille was one of our starting points. And so I'll just point out a few features in here that we found inspiring. Obviously the ciborium itself, which you can see on the left-hand picture here. We're planning on doing something fairly similar to this at the front of St. Paul's for our ciborium. So we thought, okay, let's keep that in mind as we look through design options for the confessional and keep that in our mind so that the confessional design is in conversation with the design for the front of the church. There's also lots of interesting things that we liked here, various traditional column designs. There's lots of this kind of striated stone that you see in multiple points in this church, in the ciborium itself, and also surrounding it and throughout that whole church. You can see it in these archways here. So we thought, okay, well, maybe we'll think about that a little bit. And then on the right-hand side here, we see the exterior of this church. And what I actually ended up pulling a lot of ideas from, and we'll get into this in a little bit, this kind of archway on the top of their central dome, supporting their dome. I looked at that and I just thought the proportions look really similar. And there's a few features here I'll get into in a second that we kind of extracted some ideas from this church in Marseille. From there, we had these kind of inspiration images floating around. I prepared some sketches that I presented to our design subcommittee and to our larger committee. So these were just kind of some rough ideas of what things could look like. So some are better than others. You always have to be prepared to put out a bunch of ideas that you're going to look at and be like, I don't know about that, in order to get to something that you're really happy with. So that's always a bit of a process. You have to get comfortable with seeing things you're not happy with on paper. So what we ended up settling on is this bottom right sketch. Now you can see there's a lot of similarity between that and the ciborium in Marseille and the ciborium sketches and design development that we've put together for St. Paul's. We started with that. We thought, okay, let's start there. Everybody liked that sketch the best, and we thought we'd move forward. And so then what we did next is we looked at that sketch placed on the back wall at St. Paul's to just see if there's anything, once we put it together, if we're concerned about anything or think there's any elements that need to be developed further. We also started looking at some sketches for the Holy Door in the center here. So, again, we thought the proportions were working good here, that the doors, the height, everything was starting to come together nicely. One thing I started to think about this point is, as I mentioned a little bit previously, looking at the picture of the back of the church, There are lots of sprinkler pipes and things going on up here. We kind of thought, okay, maybe this peak needs to come down a little bit. But yeah, we were happy with how this was looking. So then from there, what we did is we went to the bishop for approval. We took our schematic idea here before we got too far. Here's what we would like to do. And we looked for approval from him before proceeding any further on this. One of the elements for the confessional renovation here is, we were talking about the renovation as a whole. Father Pennant came up with the idea of getting the confessionals ready for the year of mercy, or the Jubilee year, I should say, which starts in December here in just a few short weeks. Father Pennant can clear up any questions on this, but the idea of the Jubilee year was about reconciliation between God and his people. So we thought, okay, this is a really fitting time to get our confessionals developed and get those ready for this time as a way of accentuating confession and reconciliation as in the Catholic faith. That's our way of being reconciled to God and being put back in right relationship with him. So Father Pennant had this aggressive time frame that he wanted to accomplish, and we talked about it and thought, yeah, I think we can do this. I think we can get this done. We'll have to roll up our sleeves a little bit here and get to this, but let's make this happen. So one of the hurdles there was the approval from the bishop. So we worked through some design ideas here. So we did that. This is the document here that we put together here at this point, knowing things are going to develop and change a little bit here, but making sure we get that secured in place before we run ahead of ourselves. As we had that in for approval, and once we got approval, you take a concept you come up with and you have to then kind of vet it out for construction. I mean, there's always so many things to think about, so you have to just kind of sometimes put some things aside, focus on the design, and then come back later and think about construction and how we're going to build that, some of the technical elements here. And as we started to work through those, we thought, okay, well, maybe the previous example was just a little high considering some of the sprinkler and electrical work services that are kind of going on above the confessionals. So we brought the peak down and just fine-tuned things a little bit here, thinking about some of the design elements of the woodwork on either side, column heights, looking at the detailing, all the woodwork that's going on the outside here, and working through some technical considerations to get this ready for construction. A few things came to mind. We thought, okay, well, being the nature of the confessionals being below the choir loft and having some sprinklers and things above it in that ceiling space exposed above the confessional area, we decided to just bring the peak of that confessional down from the previous sketch that we saw. We also decided to kind of split that peak into two, and this was kind of in response to seeing some of those pictures of the outside of that dome in the church in Marseille that we thought was a good inspiration for us. You'll be able to see some of the elements that we saw. I'm showing on this sketch the striated stone look. In this case, we think it'll probably be out of wood, and over the archway of the confessional doors. Lots of detail on these pediments over top of the confessional doors, and then again, lots of detailing going on over top. Just as a room that you're coming up to, a person, obviously in your body, you're coming up to this. You want the rooms and the details to be the scale of your body. And especially a small room like this, to come up to it and feel like there's something going on here. There's lots of detail. Our body, I think, just the way we perceive spaces, when we see lots of detail really richly in a small space like this, it kind of gives us this clue that there's something important going on here. And so we see a bit of an intensity of detail as we come up to the confessional. Also, a window in the door. We tried to figure out how to navigate this best. There's lots of concerns with, obviously, privacy. It's a very vulnerable space for us when we come in and confess our sins in the confessional, but also needing to balance the covenant of care requirements that basically require a window into the confessional, and also all the requirements for sound, acoustic privacy. So we thought a lot about that, making sure the room and the walls, especially the outside walls of the confessional, are insulated, built in such a way that the sound stays in the confessional. And then also including a little bit of what we call active sound management or sound masking in the form of an exhaust fan, which helps keep the confessionals cool for Father, especially who's sitting there for hours on end, providing a little bit of that noise to just mask the sound of the voices inside. A little bit of what this looked like from there, taking that from the sketch world into a hard line drawing or a drafted drawing. Yeah, really getting close to the point where we were ready to start construction here. I put this side by side again with some of our inspiration images here, so you can see the similarity between the dome of the church in Marseille that we used as an inspiration. And you can kind of see, maybe you can pick up some of the similarities between the front of the confessional, the doors, and the rose window or the circular window in the center of the door, the archway, and the triangular top, in comparison with that top of that dome. I thought maybe it's interesting to see side by side what an inspiration looks like as it makes its way through concept sketches and to the construction drawings, to see how those they change, how much stays the same, how it can be recognized, but it's also its own new thing in our church. What I thought we would do next here, after looking at some of the design development, how the concept came together, walk you just a little bit through the construction drawings and show you what a set of construction drawings look like. Some of us have never seen these, but this is what we gave to the folks at J&H who were on site constructing the confessionals here right now as we record this video. The first page here, we're just showing, really the main thing here is the existing floor plan. You can see here what this looks like on the floor plan. We haven't talked really about the mother's room yet, but that being a big component of what we're doing here, creating the space for that mother's room from what currently was the confessional space, and that whole back room being changed into that mother's room to provide that space for young parents of young children, especially for a quiet space, either for changing or for feeding or whatever, just to give somewhere that's close to the church, close to the Mass and the prayers that are happening in our church, but also separate and some acoustic privacy or just visual privacy for breastfeeding or whatever it happens to be, to give that space close in the church for young parents. Yeah, so I mean, this at a high level shows some of the, independent from the confessionals themselves, some of the other things we're doing just to make the back of the church operate a little more effectively. There's now a door leading up to the choir loft, so we can manage some security concerns there with access up to the choir loft so close to the front door. The welcomer's closet, we will create a little space right inside that door there that's out of sight a little bit from the vestibule itself. For the confessionals themselves, we have, as I've mentioned, confessionals on both sides of the church to allow us more capacity for confessions to be heard during a penitential service. We have lots of ability to have confessions heard here. So the rooms themselves, I'll just zoom in on one of them here. We have a room for the penitent and a room for the priest, obviously. The priest will have a chair somewhere in here to sit. And then there's the confessional screen here, which is, we have to design that out exactly yet, how that's going to look yet. But, some kind of screen space with a kneeler in front of it for the penitent and a chair in the corner here, somehow fitting in that room. So we have the ability to make your confession either sitting in a chair or kneeling, whatever's best for you and what you feel most comfortable with. The idea of a confessional screen is that there obviously is the ability to have your voice go through into the priest's room for him to hear you, obviously, but also to provide that privacy. Confession, among other things, is that it's anonymous. That we are able to go in there and make our confession to the priest, to Christ, but also to have earthly considerations, but necessary considerations for privacy for us, that Father can go out and it can help him. He can maintain the seal of the confessional, so he's not necessarily going out and having that difficulty of thinking about these things outside of the confessional. But really maintaining, that anonymity, but also in a way that we can foster an intimacy there between ourselves, especially between ourselves and Christ, who really is the one who hears our confession and absolves us or forgives us. Yeah, and the last thing that I'll mention here on looking at these construction drawings, obviously you can see dimensions, you can see some, we call these tags here, that tell the contractor what these walls are made out of, how he's to build them. You can see some squiggly lines here on the outside of the confessionals on the walls that make up the perimeter. Those squiggly lines, it's a symbol we use to show that these walls are insulated. And we have insulation in these walls here. That keeps sound from passing through those walls outside to the folks that are waiting over here, lining up for confession. We also have something called resilient channels, which is a way we just hang our drywall in the confessionals that just again helps with keeping sound in the confessional and not traveling through the walls outside. And one thing I'll just mention too, you got to think about all kinds of things when you're designing these types of spaces, especially when they're small spaces that have a really important or really intense kind of use in them. The doors are swinging towards the lineup, so as you come out, it's easy to walk out or into the confessional from the lineup over here. So just a little, yeah, so that's the close-up floor plan. This is what we call an elevation, which just means taking a floor plan and elevating it up so we can see it in 3-dimension, or see it vertically how it looks. You've seen these drawings already, but again, that's maybe interesting to see the progress from a sketch all the way through to the actual construction drawings here to see what that looks like when it's finished. This drawing on the bottom is called a section. It's just basically imagining if we cut through the confessionals, what will we see? And it helps the contractor to understand what we'd like to see inside the walls. Again, you see the squiggly lines for the insulation. You can start to see some of the detailing here, which we'll show in another drawing. It shows now at this point what the inside of the confessionals are looking like, what kinds of finishes we're adding on the walls to make these a really beautiful and comfortable and intimate kind of space inside. So that's what this page is all about, is showing different things like moldings or detailing on the inside of the walls, showing paint colors, what's to be painted, what color, what's to be stained wood, what are the heights of ceilings and things like that, really getting into some of those nitty-gritty details. So at the top we have drawings showing the mother's room, and we have the existing window in there, which we'll get to see really beautifully. It's really going to be highlighted in that room. It's the Lumen Christi window. It's a cut glass window. There's a special name for how the glass is made. I can't remember. Father Penna knows it, but it's actually a very expensive window, and it's very beautifully made. So we wanted to make sure that that room was focusing on that window, and you'd be able to see that and really celebrate that. On the north wall of the mother's room, we have a spot for a TV to go, so you'll be able to, when you're in that space, you'll be able to stay engaged with what's going on in the liturgy outside, if the door happens to be closed. And at the bottom, we just have some details about what the confessional screen will look like. Some of this is going to change a little bit as we got on site and got the walls framed up. Father Penna wanted to see a couple of changes to how that the size and the shape of the opening a little bit. So it's a little bit different than what we're showing here. But nonetheless, for the inside of the confessional, the idea is to have wood paneling up to about 3'6" with lots of detailing, and then above that we'll have a painted gypsum surface. Again, the idea is just when you're in that room, I think everybody feels more comfortable with wood around them. It just seems like that's a thing about who we are as humans. And yeah, I mean, really making that room intimate, comfortable to be in, and supporting, the idea that we're really, opening ourselves up, opening our souls up to Christ to be forgiven, and making sure the space is comfortable and appropriate for that. Yeah, and I think that's about it. There's a last page here that has finished schedules, door schedules. Really, this is kind of boring stuff, but it just has all the details of, what door, what size, what shape, what notes, what details on it. So this is just, boring stuff for the construction geeks out there. Really, that's what we have for the confessionals. I hope walking through this was helpful, understanding what's coming. I mean, we're going to see it in a couple of weeks here. It's going to be functional, hopefully by the 1st of December. We're certainly on track for that. But yeah, we just wanted to show you a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes. I know, our church is very important to all of us. The architecture matters to us. We all, I think we probably all have at least some appreciation for the beauty of our church, and wanting to make sure that that's, that those of us that are entrusted with that process, the design committee, the design subcommittee, the renovation committee, that we're all, taking that very seriously. And so we thought we'd like to show you that and let you into that process a little bit to hopefully appreciate it and know that we're certainly taking it seriously, and it's a huge honor for myself to be involved in this process. So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and I think that's it. All right, as a bit of a teaser, Easter egg for those of you who stuck around here till the end, I'm going to give you a little teaser of what's to come and what we're working on at the front of the church now that the confessionals are underway, and we're kind of actively marching through the construction on that section of the church. And we've kind of turned our attention back to the front. What we're currently doing is we're working on a really high quality professional rendering of the front of the church to really, get one snapshot as close as we can to real life of what this whole renovation is going to do to our church. So I'm getting ready for that right now. I'm starting to put together some ideas and do some modeling work in my 3D modeling software and get that ready to hand on to a fellow who's going to do that. So I thought I'd just walk you through what we're looking at right now. So what I have in front of me here is kind of a bare bones version of that render. We're going to get a professional renderer to take this and add all the materials, all the light and shadow, all the details in here and make this really look like almost like a photograph. But for now, what I'm working is just trying to get as much of the information in there as I can to give to him. So some of this will look familiar, some of this will be new. What we have in here that is probably the thing you've seen the most of is the ciborium design. So what I've done since probably what you guys have seen last is I've drafted that as a 3D model now, and we'll take that and we'll make construction drawings similar to what we did for the confessionals. But where we are right now is, yeah, that's modeled up in our program. What we've been adding and working with over the last couple of months, working with the bishop's office, is things like our altar rail here. We have the bishop's chair and what we would call a reredos behind that, which is basically just a screen, kind of a vertical screen that goes behind something important like a tabernacle or a cathedra, bishop's chair. We have another reredos here and tabernacle shown in the center. We have our altar under the ciborium. The ambo is here, and one of our next steps, hopefully, is to rearrange these elements in the sanctuary itself before we begin the renovation, so we can push and play a little bit and figure out, what works where. Is what we're doing here, is it going to work how we've drawn it? Do we need to revise and change things as we go here on the fly? So that's a very valuable way to learn some lessons. And then the most recent thing I've been working on is trying to pull forward some of our inspiration images that we've looked at earlier here in the confessional discussion, and look at how we can beautify the surrounding area around our ciborium, above our liturgical elements here, and make this a really fitting space for our liturgies. So we have some columns here that you'll see maybe some reference points back to our inspiration images. We got some arches added in. Some of these elements were here before, and we're just looking at ways we can take what was there, push forward the Romanesque detailing and design to try to make a space that looks timeless, that looks new, looks old, hard to place in the era of history. I mean, I think the most successful Catholic churches are always kind of that timeless. They look like they've come to us almost from another world. And so then on the side, we have some more arches. We got some columns, multiple scales. We've got kind of a line there. We got a line up here at the same line as our arched window up above. And then we have a line in the back here. It's always kind of a successful architectural tool to kind of have things happening at different levels, especially as we go up, to get more and more refined, to get more detail as you go up. It draws your eye upwards physically, but also hopefully spiritually inside of us to bring our thoughts and our hearts up towards heaven. We see lots of detail at the top of the ciborium as we get up high there, and lots of detail around the tabernacle. Again, is architectural techniques for doing spiritual work of bringing our minds and hearts, centering it on the altar, on what's happening at the altar in the tabernacle, and the kind of the central mysteries of our faith. And one other little thing, I don't know, is sometimes it's not so clearly visible on the outside, but when you have these types of thoughts baked into the design, it really makes things look natural and right rather than looking odd or goofy. Hopefully we don't end up with that. What we have here, just looking at this arch on the left-hand side, we have the bottom line of the base of the columns. We have this top line here. And then what we have is at almost the exact half point here, we have the line of the lower columns here. And so you end up kind of with a similar proportion here above and below, and that just helps make everything feel right. Our eyes are looking for these patterns whether we realize it or not, so to kind of bake them into the design always makes things much more successful. And one other neat thing that's just kind of an architectural tidbit is when you have an arch, especially up higher, but really at any point in a building, you never start the arch at the actual radius point. You have a little, it's called, I forget, stilting, I think it's called. I forget the term off the top of my head, but you basically raise the arch up and have a little straight section here, and it helps the arch just look more natural. I don't know why that is, but it's just a thing about the way our eyes work. So we actually have that again in this main arch over in the center of the apse. There is quite a significant stilt here that the arch is sitting on. And again, it just, if you were to draw this column top right up there, it would look really odd. So it just helps things look more natural. So again, these are just things that are behind the scenes that we're thinking about, that, they're old traditional architectural techniques that we're just trying to bring back as much beauty as we can from all of history, from all of our tradition, and kind of bring that and put that into our church now as something that's fitting for worship and hopefully pleasing to God. So thank you.